Attachment to logical reasoning is like trying to capture the ocean in a cup.
The emptiness that many fear is the sacred cradle of all possibilities.
Emptiness is not a dead space, but an infinite field of possibilities.
Mental silence is like a divine melody that everyone can learn to hear.
Hello, I'm Ruby and Oliver, and today I have the honor of welcoming two of the greatest spiritual masters in history. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, one of the deepest masters of Advaita Vedanta, and Rumi, the Sufi mystical poet who revolutionized our understanding of love and consciousness. Today we will dive into a topic that afflicts millions of people: how to overcome overthinking. In an increasingly fast-paced and mentally overloaded world, this conversation is more relevant than ever. If you've ever felt trapped in an endless cycle of thoughts, anxiety, or worries, this episode is made especially for you. We will explore practical methods and deep insights on how to free our minds from the weight of overthinking. An intriguing question to start our conversation today. Sri Nisargadatta, is the call of emptiness an invitation to free ourselves from the mind, or to delve deeper into its complexity?
Well, Rubian, the call of emptiness is not simply an escape from the mind or its complexity. It is an invitation for deeper investigation. Think of the mind as a great theater where endless dramas of desires and fears are constantly staged. The emptiness we mention is not a dead space or an absence. It is an infinite field of possibilities where everything arises and disappears. When we dive into mental complexity, we begin to recognize its illusions and how they keep us trapped in a limited identity. How to transform inner emptiness into a portal for self-knowledge. The difference between deep contemplation and obsessive thinking. Practical techniques to find mental peace amidst the chaos of everyday life. It's fascinating how, by doing this, what once seemed a confusing tangle begins to unravel into clarity. This process of observation and investigation does not mean we become slaves to the mind. On the contrary, we observe its operations as a scientist would observe a phenomenon, distinguishing the real from the illusory. It is through this journey that we can experience emptiness as true freedom, recognizing our essential nature as the conscious space where everything happens.
What a fascinating perspective on this dance between emptiness and mental complexity. And you, Rumi, how do you see this issue? Does the call of emptiness invite us to flee from the mind, or to dive into its complexity?
Rubian, the call of emptiness is a precious invitation to explore the complexity of the mind, not to flee from it. It is within this apparent emptiness that we find the essence of our being, often hidden beneath layers of fears, desires, and the constant pressures of daily life. Imagine a dervish in his sacred dance. When he spins in ecstasy, his mind is not an obstacle, but a portal that connects the human to the divine. The complexity of the mind is like an intricate tapestry, where each thread represents an experience, an emotion, or a thought. When we contemplate the complete design, we discover the beauty of our inner landscape. The true call of emptiness invites us to embrace this complexity and discover the light that resides even in the darkest corners of our mind, transforming confusion into crystal-clear clarity.
Extraordinary how both views intertwine so harmoniously. While Sri Nisargadatta shows us emptiness as a field of possibilities where we can observe and transcend the illusions of the mind, Rumi presents us with a beautiful metaphor of the mind as a sacred tapestry to be contemplated. I've learned that it's not about choosing between liberation or complexity, but understanding how one leads to the other in a transformative dance. Let's explore more about this in our next question. This is a question that afflicts many people. Sri Nisargadatta, how can we overcome the suffering that arises from overthinking? How can we find peace when our mind seems to have no off button?
Rubian, this is a very pertinent question. The suffering generated by overthinking is intrinsically linked to our identification with the mind. It's as if we are constantly immersed in a whirlwind of thoughts, losing connection with our true essence. Imagine a calm pond. When the stones we throw into it create waves, the surface becomes agitated. But if we observe patiently, we will notice that the waves eventually dissipate. So our thoughts, they come and go, but the essence that observes remains unchanged. The practice of meditation is fundamental in this process. By focusing on I am, we set aside the narratives the mind creates, returning to the present moment. Overthinking often traps us between regrets of the past and anxieties about the future, but life only happens in the now. Cultivating acceptance of reality, rather than fighting against what we cannot change, also helps dissipate suffering. It is a path of detachment, where we understand that true freedom transcends the limitations of the mind.
What a profound perspective on our relationship with thoughts. Rumi, I would love to hear your view on how we can overcome this suffering caused by overthinking.
Look, Rubian, the suffering generated by overthinking is like a veil that obscures the light of our essence. When we overly identify with our thoughts, it's as if we are being swept away by a strong current, losing our grounding in the present. The practice of inner silence and surrender to the present moment is fundamental. When we allow ourselves to stop and breathe, we begin to see that thoughts are not necessarily truths, but just passing clouds in the vast sky of our consciousness. Meditation becomes a powerful ally in this journey. It's like being a spectator of a movie. We can observe the plot without fully identifying with it. Moreover, when we connect with the love that resides within us, we naturally soften the intensity of suffering. The invitation is to dance with life, allowing love to guide us. Remember, the light is always present, even when temporarily obscured by clouds of thoughts.
What transformative insights! Sri Nisargadatta shows us how we can observe our thoughts as passing waves in a pond, while Rumi reminds us that we are more like the sky that holds the clouds than the clouds themselves. I realize that the key is not to fight against thoughts, but to develop a new relationship with them, based on conscious observation and love. Before we continue, let me give you an amazing tip. Did you know that it's very easy to get ahead of 99% of people, succeeding in everything you desire for your life? I'll leave a link below in the description to a book that changed my perspective on various aspects of my mind and has been helping thousands of people find clarity and confidence to achieve their goals and dreams. Don't miss it. I'm sure you'll love it. Continuing our conversation, we now arrive at another question that deeply touches the human heart. Sri Nisargadatta, is the search for life purpose a response to existential emptiness or a distraction from what really matters?
Rubian, this search for purpose emerges from a deep place within us, like an echo of the emptiness we feel. It's interesting to note that we often turn this search into an external journey, as if we were looking for treasure in distant lands, when in fact it is right here, in our own essence. When we overly identify with this search, it can become an elaborate distraction, like a labyrinth that takes us away from the center instead of guiding us to it. What really matters is not finding a defined purpose, but recognizing that our true nature transcends any definition or role we may assume. True freedom and happiness manifest when we abandon this incessant search and simply allow life to flow through us. It's like waking up from a dream and realizing that what we were looking for was present all along.
And what about you, Master Rumi? How do you see this issue of life purpose and its relation to existential emptiness?
This search for purpose is like an ancient song that resonates in our soul. It is a genuine call that emerges from the depths of our being, reflecting both our thirst for meaning and our connection to something greater than ourselves. Imagine a craftsman shaping a vase. The emptiness inside the vase is not an absence, it is precisely what makes it useful. Similarly, the existential emptiness we feel is not something to be feared or hastily filled, but a sacred space where our true nature can reveal itself. However, when this search is driven only by external pressures or social expectations, it can become an escape. True purpose is not a fixed destination, but a path of self-discovery that invites us to dance with life in its most authentic expression. It is in the vulnerability of this search, in the courage to look within, that we find not only answers but a deep connection with the love that is our true essence.
Extraordinary how these perspectives complement each other. While Sri Nisargadatta shows us how the search can become an elaborate distraction from what we already are, Rumi presents emptiness as a sacred space for discovery. But let's continue our exploration. A question that touches the heart of our daily practice. Sri Nisargadatta, is living intensely in the present enough to overcome the cycle of repetitive thoughts? How can we really transcend these mental patterns that challenge us so much?
Rubian, this is an important observation. Living in the present is fundamental, but we need to understand that it is just the first step of a deeper journey. Imagine consciousness as a vast sky and repetitive thoughts as clouds passing by. It's not enough to just observe the sky. We need to understand our true nature as the very space where everything happens. Conscious presence must be accompanied by a deeper understanding of the nature of the mind. When we identify with the personal self, we become trapped in habitual patterns that repeat like a scratched record. True transformation occurs when we recognize that we are the consciousness that observes, not the thoughts themselves. This awakening to our essence should not be forced. It is a natural process of acceptance and detachment. When we develop this witness consciousness, repetitive thoughts begin to lose their power over us, bringing a clarity and peace that are essential for self-knowledge.
What an enlightening perspective on consciousness and mental patterns. But Master Rumi, I would like to hear your view on how presence in the current moment can help us transcend these repetitive cycles of thought.
Living in the present, Rubian, is like opening a window to the fresh breeze of consciousness, but we need to go beyond mere presence. Imagine the mind as a stream. When we are truly present, we allow the waters to flow naturally, without resistance. However, for lasting transformation, we need to cultivate an inner lightness that allows us to observe thoughts without identifying with them. The practice of meditation becomes our ally, helping us develop this art of conscious observation. It's like hosting guests in our home. Each thought, each emotion deserves to be recognized and respected, but we don't need to cling to them. True freedom lies in transcending the mental cycle and allowing life to dance through us, moment by moment.
Fascinating how both perspectives illuminate different aspects of this issue. I now understand that presence in the current moment is crucial, but it needs to be accompanied by a deeper understanding and a constant practice of disidentification from thoughts. I hope you who are watching us have also realized the importance of these words. And of course, leave your like to show how much you appreciate this subject. Don't forget to subscribe as well, because every week we will bring great names from ancient wisdom to answer these deep questions that are so important in our lives. Now let's move on to a question that touches the depths of the human soul. Sri Nisargadatta, is the inner void a portal to self-knowledge or a dangerous abyss we should avoid?
Look, Rubian, this is a very significant perception. The inner void is indeed a precious portal, although many initially fear it. It's like contemplating the sunrise. The darkness that precedes dawn may seem frightening, but it is precisely through it that the light reveals itself in all its splendor. The restlessness we feel in this empty space arises from mental identification, which constantly seeks to fill gaps with distractions or fleeting desires. When we learn to embrace this void with awareness and love, it reveals itself as an infinite field of potential where we can discern our true needs and deepest desires. Instead of fearing this space of nothingness, we can see it as an opportunity to reconnect with our true essence, which is beyond the limitations of the mind. It is through this recognition that we find peace that is unshaken by the fluctuations of the world. Therefore, enter this void directly with awareness and love, and it will reveal itself as the portal that leads to the realization of the true self.
And what about you, Rumi? How do you see this issue? Is the inner void really a portal to self-knowledge?
Rubian, the void that many fear is, in fact, the sacred cradle of all possibilities. Think of a garden in winter, seemingly lifeless, but holding in its silence all the seeds of spring that are yet to come. Often, we run from feelings of emptiness, trying to fill them with distractions, whether relationships, work, or material possessions. However, the true danger lies not in the void itself, but in our constant attempt to escape it. It is precisely in this seemingly empty space that we find the fertile ground for our growth and self-knowledge. When we allow ourselves to inhabit this space with courage and openness, we discover that it is not an endless abyss, but a lit portal where love, authenticity, and creativity begin to blossom. This is the sacred space where the limited I dissolves to give way to union with the divine.
What transformative visions! Sri Nisargadatta shows us the void as a portal to our true essence, while Rumi depicts it as a hibernating garden, holding infinite possibilities. I now realize that the void is not something to be feared, but a precious gift that, when embraced with courage and awareness, reveals unimaginable treasures of self-knowledge. Now we come to an intriguing question about our human nature. Sri Nisargadatta, is overthinking an innate characteristic of the human mind or a symptom of modern society?
Look, Rubian, this question touches on something very deep about our nature. Overthinking is like a dance between our natural predisposition and the influences of the modern world. The mind, by its very nature, has this tendency to wander, constantly seeking meaning in a universe of impermanence. Imagine clear water in a calm lake reflecting the sunlight. When we throw stones into the water, it creates a disturbance that makes it impossible to see the bottom. Our mind today is like this disturbed lake, not only because of its restless nature but amplified by the avalanche of stimuli and pressures of modern life. The interesting thing is that this tendency is not exclusively a product of contemporary society, although it certainly intensifies this pattern. Living in a state of constant agitation, our mind becomes overloaded, resulting in an incessant flow of thoughts and worries. To transcend this instability, we need to recognize that we are more than our thoughts, accessing that clarity that already resides in our essence.
Rumi, I would like to hear your perspective on this issue. Is overthinking something inherent to us or a reflection of modern times?
Rubian, this tendency towards overthinking reflects both our human nature and the environment in which we live. Imagine a dancer in a room full of mirrors, naturally talented, but now trapped in an exaggerated self-awareness, analyzing each movement with excessive concern. This is the modern human condition. We constantly seek to understand, analyze, and make sense of experiences, but today's society, with its incessant demands and expectations, dramatically amplifies this tendency. The constant flow of information and the pressure for perfection create an environment where overthinking becomes almost inevitable. The invitation is to return to a natural state of being, where the dance of thought is not a burden but a fluid and spontaneous expression. When we allow ourselves to simply exist, without external labels and expectations, we find the freedom that our mind so desperately seeks.
Extraordinary how both views complement each other. I now understand that overthinking is a combination of our nature with modern pressures, and that the key lies in finding a more natural and authentic balance. But let's continue our exploration. A fascinating question that touches the essence of our spiritual journey. Sri Nisargadatta, does attachment to logical reasoning distance us from enlightenment, or is it essential for finding meaning in life?
Rubian, this is a delicate question that deserves our attention. Attachment to logical reasoning can become a subtle trap on our spiritual journey. It's like trying to capture the ocean in a cup. No matter how useful the cup is, it will never be able to contain the vastness of the waters. Logic is a valuable tool for navigating the material world, like a map that helps us find directions. However, when we cling rigidly to it, we risk losing the direct experience of reality, like someone so focused on the GPS that they fail to appreciate the beauty of the landscape around them. True enlightenment transcends the limits of intellect. It is an experience that connects us with something far beyond what we can rationalize. The challenge is to use logic as a helpful tool, without letting it become a prison that prevents us from accessing deeper dimensions of consciousness.
What a profound analogy about the limitations of logic. Rumi, how do you see this issue of logical reasoning in relation to enlightenment and the meaning of life?
Look, Rubian, when we cling too much to logical reasoning, it's like trying to explain dance solely through the analysis of steps. We may understand the technique perfectly, but we lose the essence of movement, the joy and ecstasy that dance provides. Logic has its place in our lives, but enlightenment requires us to venture beyond its boundaries. It's like a musician who must first learn the notes, but then must transcend them to create true art. Divine love and spiritual connection inhabit a realm that reason alone cannot reach. True wisdom lies in finding a balance, allowing reason to guide us when necessary, but always keeping our hearts open to experiences that transcend logical understanding.
It's amazing how these perspectives intertwine. Sri Nisargadatta shows us how logic can be a useful but limited tool, while Rumi reminds us that there are dimensions of human experience that transcend rational thought. We now come to a very interesting question that touches the heart of our spiritual practice. Sri Nisargadatta, is mental silence an achievable goal for everyone or a privilege reserved for a few spiritual masters?
Rubian, let me clarify something important. Mental silence is not an exclusive gift of spiritual masters, but a natural potential present in every human being. It's like a treasure buried in your own garden. Everyone has access to it. You just need to know where and how to dig. The mind naturally stirs, filled with thoughts and distractions, but the true challenge lies in observing these thoughts without identifying with them. Imagine an observer sitting by the riverbank. The waters, thoughts, continue to flow, but the observer remains serene, merely witnessing their movement. The practice of self-knowledge and meditation is fundamental in this process, as it creates a space of observation where silence can be experienced. It is not a distant goal, but a reality present in each of us, waiting only to be awakened through will and dedication.
Master Rumi, I would like to hear your perspective on this possibility of mental silence for all of us.
Rubian, mental silence is like a divine melody that everyone can learn to hear. It is not a privilege of the few, but a universal invitation for all who wish to dive into the depths of their being. The true challenge lies in detaching from the incessant inner voices, the worries of daily life, and the remnants of the ego that insist on manifesting. It's like a dancer in a trance. They do not allow anything to interrupt their sacred movement. Their mind and body become one in the search for truth. The practice can come through meditation, contemplation of nature, or even a simple act of conscious breathing. Mental silence reveals itself as a gradual achievement that invites us to dive into our essence. It is a dance that each one can learn with practice and surrender.
Fascinating how both perspectives illuminate different aspects of this question. Sri Nisargadatta brings us the image of the serene observer by the river, while Rumi presents us with the beautiful metaphor of the sacred dance. Well, we have arrived at another quite relevant question about our inner journey. Sri Nisargadatta, is there a healthy limit between deep contemplation and the trap of incessant thinking? How can we identify when we have crossed that line?
Rubian, this is a subtle but crucial distinction. Deep contemplation is like a conscious dive into the ocean of consciousness, where each movement leads us to a clearer understanding of our essential nature. Unlike incessant thinking, which is like being trapped in a whirlpool of ideas that pulls us away from the center. When the mind becomes a labyrinth of repetitive thoughts, we lose the clarity and presence that characterize true contemplation. It's like being in a dark cave where the echoes of our own thoughts create confusion and suffering. The key lies in the quality of attention we bring to the process. Genuine contemplation keeps us anchored in the present, allowing us to observe thoughts with detachment without identifying with them. It is through this practice of self-observation that we can notice when exploration becomes compulsive, always returning to the space of simply being.
Rumi, how do you see this distinction between deep contemplation and excessive thinking?
Rubian, imagine a poet under the moonlight. Their contemplation is a gentle dance with the mystery of existence, while incessant thinking would be like being trapped in a whirlwind of words without being able to grasp the essence of poetry. Deep contemplation is a state where the mind becomes a channel for divine inspirations, allowing emotions and ideas to flow naturally. It is different from obsessive thinking, which, like a wheel spinning endlessly, keeps us trapped in repetitive patterns. The balance lies in awareness. When we become witnesses to our experiences, recognizing both the sadness and beauty of life without letting ourselves be dominated by them, we find the sacred space of true contemplation. It is in this place of acceptance that transformation occurs.
Impressive how these visions complement each other. I realize that the difference lies in the quality of our presence. While contemplation connects us with our essence, incessant thinking keeps us on the surface of experience. Let's continue exploring a question that touches the core of our relationship with the mind. Sri Nisargadatta, can thought be disciplined, or does the attempt to control it only reinforce its intensity?
Rubian, that is a profound observation. The attempt to control thought usually produces the opposite effect of what we desire. It's like trying to calm the waves of the sea by pushing them, the more force we apply, the more agitation we create. The true path lies not in control, but in the art of conscious observation. When we become witnesses to our thoughts, we begin to realize that they are like passing clouds in the sky of consciousness. They come and go naturally, without the need for interference. The discipline that truly matters is not that of forced control, but of patient self-observation. Through this practice, we develop a deeper understanding of the nature of the mind. When we do not identify with thoughts, they naturally lose their intensity, allowing peace and clarity to manifest spontaneously.
What a liberating perspective on our relationship with thoughts. Rumi, how do you see this issue of mental discipline versus control of thoughts?
Look, Rubian, thought is like a wild river. Its nature is to flow freely. When we try to dam it or control its course, we risk creating more turbulence and resistance. Instead of imposing a rigid discipline, we can learn to flow with thoughts like a skilled boatman navigating the waters, not fighting against the current, but understanding its patterns and movements. It's a delicate dance between presence and acceptance. True transformation happens when we cultivate an attitude of loving curiosity towards our thoughts, without judgments or pressures. Just as Shams of Tabriz taught about unconditional love, we must embrace our mental nature with compassion and understanding.
With these words, I learned that true mental discipline is not about controlling thoughts, but about developing a new relationship with them, based on understanding and acceptance. But unfortunately, we have come to the end of our extraordinary conversation, and what an incredible journey it has been. Our masters Sri Nisargadatta and Rumi have guided us through a true treasure of wisdom on how to deal with excessive thinking and find inner peace. We explored how emptiness can be a portal to self-knowledge, learned about the difference between deep contemplation and obsessive thinking, and discovered that mental silence is not a privilege of the few, but a natural capacity that we can all develop. I want to express my deep gratitude to our masters for sharing such transformative insights. Their timeless wisdom remains as relevant today as it ever was, especially in these times of mental overload. And if you identified with our conversation about excessive thoughts and the search for mental balance, be sure to check out our video, Do Not React, Learn to Master Your Emotions, where we delve into practical techniques to develop greater emotional intelligence and mastery over our reactions. I also highly recommend our episode, Feeling Lost? How to Understand and Evaluate Your Mental Health, where we explore powerful tools to better understand our mental health and transform our relationship with ourselves. You can find the links to both videos here on the screen. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, now is the time. We regularly bring content like this, combining ancestral wisdom with practical applications for our modern life. Thank you for watching until now, and I wish you to be free from everything that takes away your peace.